there are several others. We're running low on time, so I'm going to one of those that she was coming and she was unable to arrive. And we call her Alice Poe, a pseudonym. Alice Poe is my pseudonym. I'm using a pseudonym for my safety. I have given an affidavit containing my real identity to John Ray, along with this affidavit. I am over age 18. I reside in Nassau County, New York. I had graduated high school in 1994. I was living in a budget inn on Montauk Highway in Patchogue, Suffolk County, the year before I graduated from high school as a 16-year-old runaway. I had been in the sun several days before the incident I described in this affidavit. I was deeply sunburned, as I recall. 2 doors down from me lived a blonde woman with her baby. The blonde woman was a sex worker. We became friends. I had moved to a smaller room at the end of the motel. She had a child aged 7 or less. The child was clean. My room was very small. The sex worker would stand outside of my door with her daughter sitting on my bed, and we would talk. I walked with the woman to take her daughter to school. The woman asked me at that time to later hang out with her friends in her room at the motel. I agreed, but I didn't show up. About 1 to 2 days later, the blonde woman left the motel suddenly, leaving her child behind and not returning for about 24 hours. I was very worried. When she returned, she asked me to hang out with her friends at the Budget Inn on Friday night and day and urged me to keep my word to show up. She did not mention why she left her daughter with me for so long or where she was. On Friday morning, she came to my room and asked me if I was still going to hang out that night. I said yes. She told me she was going to wash clothes at noon and asked me if I wanted to accompany her. I went to her room at noon. She said she was no longer going to the laundromat and asked me if I was really going to show up that night. She walked into her room and picked up the phone, which was on the bed, and I realized she was on a call. I began to walk back to my room. She yelled out the door, asking if I was sure I was coming that night. I agreed to go and did so. At about 7:30 p.m. that Friday, the blonde woman came to my room, and I accompanied her to the room where her friends were. I thought we were going to her room and inquired where we were going when we passed it. She said her daughter was in bed watching TV and we couldn't hang out there. The room where her friends were was not one of the motel's guest rooms. The room was L-shaped with 2 beds, no dresser, a little alcove-type TV, and a small white microwave oven in an odd position. The room was occupied by several men and a blonde girl. One white man with blonde hair sat in a chair and seemed to be wasted. The group was drinking beer. There was a short man who appeared to be the boyfriend of the blonde. There was another man with brown hair, an older man in a gray suit, and a shorter black man. And there was one other white man who was there. He was the life of the party, talking to everyone. He tried to convince me to get mad at my boyfriend, who was not there. This boisterous person was James Burke. I was told by someone at the party that he was a cop, and that another one of the men was a cop. I had seen pictures of James Burke when he was a cop. I could identify him from those pictures. I am certain that this talkative man at the party was James Burke. James Burke was not smoking crack at this party, but shared crack with others in that room. He had the crack in a pipe. He was giving hits from the pipe to the others in the room. In case you don't think he enjoyed crack, he had a girlfriend named Loretta Rickenbacker from Massapequa, and African-American lady, and I became her lawyer, so I know firsthand what she said, and she just passed away in December. She would go with Burke, and they would smoke crack in a house in Waukandama, and it was a house that he ran other sex workers out of with another girl who had a sex business using that house. So he was into crack. Back to this. The old white man and black man did not take any hits, nor did I. I noticed that the persons taking hits would line up one behind the other in front of Burke, whereupon he would give a hit of the pipe to each of them in turn, as if in a ritual. I did not get on the line. Burke approached me as I sat on the bed. He put the pipe in my face and lit it, saying, "Come on, come on." When I refused it, his persuasive personality suddenly changed. He became hostile and urged, come on." He wore a dark, short-sleeved shirt tucked into his pants with a gold chain on his neck. I did not take a hit. The short white man, who appeared to have been the boyfriend of the blonde, left but came back. When he came back, he opened the door, began to walk inside the room with a large man behind him. Burke saw them at the door, whereupon Burke expressed anger by making a sound. He quickly took the other men, except the black man and the older white man, to the door, whereupon the large man and the short white man stepped back outside. All the men stood by the door and began to whisper to one another. Then the short white man came inside the room, leaving the large man outside, and closed the door. I could see the owner of the motel standing outside before the door closed. The men went into the alcove, where they whispered to each other, and then took out money from their wallets. The other men handed their money to the short white man, and they all went out the door and left the room, leaving the door open. I went outside. It was almost dark. The men were gathered by a fancy car for about 15 minutes. The short white man and his girlfriend stood in the corner of the motel talking. We went back into the room. The short white man and his girlfriend did not come back into the room. I was anxious because I was the only woman in the room. I decided to go look for the woman and began to walk towards the door. Burke and the white man with the brown hair, past his ears, quickly ran to the door and blocked it. They asked me where I was going. I said I was going to look for a woman. They said that she was fine and had gone back to her room. I expressed concern about her daughter being in the room. Burke and other men began to laugh. Burke told me to leave the woman alone. I went back to the bed. The wasted white man was in front of me, sitting back into the chair, and appeared to be sleeping. Burke stood over the man and tapped his arm. The man didn't move. He spoke incoherently. Burke told him to get up. Burke then raised his voice and cursed at the man to get up. When the man still didn't get up, Burke grabbed the man's arm. He got up. That man with the brown hair and Burke walked towards the alcove area. I saw the black man standing, and he gave me a very compassionate look. I began to feel frightened and tried to think of a way to get out of the room that wouldn't appear like I was attempting to leave permanently. I approached the man with the brown hair, asked for a cigarette, and if he would come outside with me to smoke it. I planned to tell him I was going to go to my room for cigarettes once outside. He agreed, and we went outside. When we went outside, the large man was there, leaning against the motel